to tee it up, Matthew, thanks for the spoiler, but yes, we're moving back to Arizona. Uh, and it's funny because I think like my it's just I think most people would see this as impulsive, and I feel like from the outside looking in, if somebody moves across the country and then a year later moves back, there's probably like a lot of like opinions that could be formed pretty easily from something like that, right? And I would do it too. But for us, it was funny because like I literally didn't think about moving back to Arizona at all before like a month ago, and which is just kind of how I am. I feel like I'm very much live in the moment and kind of find things to be thankful for in the moment until I let myself entertain an outside idea. And Caleb, I think this actually plays into like a conversation we've been having a lot about like, visionary versus integrator in the business level. And this is actually, this whole process has taught me a lot about that, which is like, I'm not really the one to come up with the brand new idea typically. Caleb, I think you are more that person than I am. I think you will be like, hey, what if we tried this thing, right? And the type of person I am is when someone brings that idea to me, immediately my thought process goes into, is it viable, right? And then I go through a checklist in my head of, okay, that's viable, that's viable, that's viable. Ooh, roadblock. Is that roadblock worth overcoming, or should we just like, quit and keep doing the thing we're doing? Or, okay, that one's worth overcoming. What about the next one? Oh, there's another roadblock. And my brain automatically starts like going through this sequence of events that would be required to make that thing happen, whether that's a business decision or a personal decision, whatever. So with the move, I hadn't thought about it at all. I was like, hey, we're in Tennessee. It's nice here. Pretty cool. Whatever. Are there some downsides? Like we're away from family, we don't really know many people, like got 2 babies under 2 years old. It's a little bit hard, but like for me, I was just like, we're fine. We're fine.
Yeah.
And until my wife came to me and was like, so what about moving back to Arizona? And my gut reaction, of course, was like, what? No, don't. This is great. We're doing fine here. You know what I mean? Like, we're fine. And then I went into that mode of like, actually, let me think through all of the things that would be required. And let me think through the pros and the cons. Let me think through like why we came here in the first place, maybe why we want to go back and whatever. And we pretty quickly realized like, yeah, that's home. That's home. So that's kind of how that happened. And so far I'm learning so much about myself through this process of like, how do you turn off like business mode, work mode enough to allocate some of those resources toward huge personal decisions that require a lot of thought. And to be honest, like, dude, it's really hard. I mean, it's really, really hard. I wouldn't recommend it for the faint of heart. It's like, it's just a lot, but yeah, I'm learning a lot from it. And I think more than anything, it falls back on like the family support that's needed to do all of these things. And that's a piece that I think I was sort of just like naive to. I think we were just like, we can make it work anywhere. And I truly think we could, but why do we have to?
Right. Right. Yeah. So true, dude. I think, and I mean, I think like one of the things I also want to highlight that I think is awesome about you and JC is that you were willing to try that, because I think either way, right? Like, let's say that you wouldn't have gone out to Nashville. I think that most people, I would definitely do this. I would probably years down the road be like, man, what if we would have done that? Like what if we would have tried Nashville like that? That's always been so cool. And then then you're tempted to try to do it later, but now your kids are older and maybe they're in school and they've got all of these friends and like more attachments and stuff. And it just becomes harder to make those decisions. So I applaud you guys for just being like, hey, let's take some time and go try this out. Right now we can. And hey, if it works, awesome, sweet. We'll stay, we'll enjoy Nashville. And if it doesn't, cool. We'll just go right on back. And I think that's that's awesome. Honestly, I don't think a lot of people do that, and then they end up living their life with this like, man, what if I would have done that? And I think that's a recurring theme.
It's a big swing.
Yeah.
But if you don't take the big swings, you never know if it's for you. It's like, and I don't actually see this as like a it's funny because like I'm glad we moved here. Like, you know what I mean? I
Mm,
think a lot of people would be like, ah man, you wasted the money of moving, you wasted the time in a new place, you wasted whatever. Like we knew that we didn't want to be in the house we were in Phoenix. So we sold that house and we knew we were going to move regardless. And when we were making that decision, we're like, why don't we try something totally new out? Like we're never
yeah.
going to know where we should be unless we do that. And then having spent a year here, I'm like, this place is great. I have nothing bad to say about the Nashville area, but it's not home.
Mm,
And I think, you know, if we spent 5 years here, maybe we would feel differently. But we're both at the stage of life where like all of our friends, all of our family are still back in Phoenix, and I feel like the common thought would be like, ah, you wasted that time, or like, you know, wow, you it was naive of you to think you could make it or whatever. But at the same time, like if you don't make that jump,
mm,
like you said, Caleb, you'll never know. And it would have been something we held on to probably because, you know, JC and I have always talked about like, where do we want to end up? You know, and now
mm,
finally, like we've had this conversation this week, we have the closure of knowing Arizona is where we want to end up. Like,
yeah.
you know, and it took us being away to understand that. But I
Yeah.
don't know. It's just one of those things where it's like, and this is like sunk cost fallacy, right? Like, I know you've seen me talking about this, Caleb, of like, I have no sunk costs. This is something I'm thinking about a lot lately, which is like, sure, the investment that I spent to get here to Tennessee, a lot of people would see that as like, we spent all this money to get us here. We need to stay here. It's to make it worth the investment or whatever. But like that's a sunk cost. That money is spent regardless. So
Right.
now in the moment, I have to decide what's best for my family, for my future,
Totally.
regardless of the cost that has incurred to get us here. You know what I mean? And people do that with
Mhm.
jobs all the time. I don't know if you know of an example, but it's like you go to college
Yeah.
for something, you know, and I spent all
Yeah,
this
it's
money
like
on the degree. I got to get a job in this field. You know, it's like you
right.
don't have to.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Dude, so good. I think it's a reoccurring theme too that we've talked about on this podcast a lot, which is that like taking the leap and just kind of, being willing to go try something that, it's like, okay, well, this might work, it might not work, but we're gonna go for it, right? And I think
Mhm.
it's cool to see you live that out in your business life and in your like entrepreneurial journey, right? Like, hey, I'm gonna take a leap, start this thing, try this thing out. Hopefully it works. We'll see. And it's kind of like
Mhm.
you get to see that play out in your personal life too, which is really, really cool. So yeah, I don't know, dude.
Mhm.
I wanted to like highlight you for that because I think it's awesome. Like it's not a lot of people would be like, hey, like let's just move away from family and try this thing out and like have the guts to really test it. And I think it's super cool that you guys did that. Like
Mhm.
I respect that a lot. So yeah.
Yeah, I think there's something really important to be said about the nature of relationships and partnerships in this because
Mm,
you and JC came to this decision together. It's not like there was like this tension and
Mhm.
like you're
mm,
completely aligned on it. And then, working with you guys every day, I see that same exact thing in the business where, you might come from it from different angles, you might have different ideas, but you two fundamentally have a partnership which leads to growth and leads to let's try it. Let's
yeah.
let's give it a go rather than hedging
Mhm.
bets, being conservative, and like sacrificing going for it for safety and status quo. I think that some things
Yeah.
that you said on your Instagram recently, Dakota, has really resonated with me because it's like safety, like static is not growth. Static is
Mm,
just continual without an up ramp. Whereas if you actually take risks, you might get a dip, but then you'll find something that actually hits and generates the growth that you look for. But you need an all-in partnership, whether it's in marriage or business, to actually make that happen. So that's really
yeah.
resonated with me over the
Mhm.
past couple months, especially.
You made a really good point there, Matthew, that like the partnership and the like the relationship is so needed to make these big swings. And I
Hmm.
think I haven't thought of it that way before, but you're so
Mm,
right. Like I am such a firm believer that because Caleb and I work so well together, we can make these huge decisions almost, it's not on a whim, but like we
mm-hmm.
can we can both get to that decision making process quickly if we're aligned on it, and it gives us the confidence that since we're aligned it's going to work, you know,
Mm.
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
like this thing where if you were doing it by yourself, you'd probably have a lot more question marks on, should I do it? Should I do it? I don't
Totally.
know. You know what I mean? But like, we can find agreement quickly and be like, oh, well, if we're in it together, then let's go. You know what I mean? And it was
Right.
the same with this move, and why like from the outside you might think it's impulsive, but from the inside, JC and I, like, it was like, oh, you've been like, it became clear to me, oh, you've been thinking about this a lot, haven't you? Okay, so I know where you're at on it. Now let me figure out if I can get to where you're at on it logically, because that's how my brain works. Oh, okay, I can get there logically. Is it going to be an expensive decision? Is it going to be something that's stressful? Yes. But if we're both in it together, like my threshold for taking a risk is so much higher, like, because I know that we're in it together. You know what I mean? And business partnership is the exact same way. It's like, honestly, dude, we're basically a married couple. I mean, like, you know, like the way
We've
we
made
make
the joke plenty
decisions,
of
you know what I
times.
mean?
Yeah.
So
It's
yeah, it's a good point, Matthew.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it really is super smart, Matthew. I haven't thought about it that way either, but it's like it's kind of like a sanity check, if you will. It's a good way for me to think about it, right? Is like if you're trying to make decisions by yourself, like I think a lot of times you second guess yourself, right? Or like, is this really something like that would be smart to do? And you try to run through all the scenarios in your head, but there's always kind of this thing in the background, at least for me, that's like there might be stuff I'm not thinking about right now, right? Like there might be some sort of the piece of the puzzle that I just am not putting together. And I think that's where I love coming to you, Dakota, and like having those phone calls that we do or meetings that we do or whatever, where it's like, you know, what do you think? Let me get your perspective. And then like, cool, maybe I did think of everything and we're all good. Or maybe it's like you come up with something that's like, I never would have thought of that. Right. And now like,
Yeah, there's
we
like
can
a
have
blind
discussion
spot
about that.
typically.
Right.
And same for me. I come to you with an idea that I'm like, oh man, this is great. We got to do it. And you're like, but what about this? And I'm like, dang it. Think about that. And then we can solve that part together. Right. But that's a healthy relationship. That's how a good marriage looks. That's how a good, any good relationship you have, you should be able to come to the table with your ideas without fear of being shot down. But then also like you can solve the problem together. Cause there's always going to be, unless you've really thought through the whole thing in depth, there's always going to be like a little thing that needs solving. Right. Yeah, dude, that's a great example, Matthew. And I do think also like I put on Instagram this week because I think this apply like people who don't have that person, it still applies to them, but maybe your tolerance for risk is a little lower. But it's like people expect big changes in their life, but are unwilling to make big changes, right? And so that's kind of something that I've been thinking a lot about lately. It's like the hard thing is scary always, whether it's switching a job, whether it's going into a new career, whether it's going off on your own and starting a business, whether it's getting married, whether it's, whatever all these things are, there are these huge decisions. For me right now, it's moving back across the country. Like it's a scary thing. Buying a house sight unseen, like there's just random stuff thrown in here that you're like, okay, this is scary. I'm going to do my best to do all my due diligence to make sure this is a good decision. But no matter what, there's a little bit of a leap of faith happening here. I think there's so many people, though, that want the result of a big risk or a leap of faith. They want that part. They want the life change. They want the monetary gain. They want the, whatever it is, you name it. That's what they want. But they're unwilling to do the thing that is a little bit challenging or scary to get there. And for me, I'm like, I want to practice what I preach. Like, I want to show my family, my team, everyone around me that like, no, I'm willing to make these big swings, knowing that they're what stand in the way of me becoming the better version of myself or getting to the place where I want to be personally. And that piece for me is like, you have to do it, dude. Otherwise, if status quo is just going to produce status quo results. If you wake up and do the exact same thing every single day, nothing is going to change. No one's going to come save you. No one's going to come give you the thing that you wish you had. Like you have to take the leap of faith. You have to.
Yeah. So good, dude. So good.
Whew.
I know.
I don't even want to go from there. This is like a hammer drop.
All right. No, but here's where we go from there. Let's talk about a leap of faith that changed your life. Like, do you guys have something in your mind? Because for me, it was quitting teaching, right? Like the career jump. That was so scary. So scary. And I second guessed myself all the time then. I was like, do I really want to do this? Like, what if I just don't find a job?
Yeah. I think there's been a lot of leaps of faith in my life that I could point to. I mean, for sure, like getting out of the hospitality industry I went to college for and got my degree in, right? And then like making the switch into originally real estate, and then I got into marketing, right? There were all of these leaps of faith into these next career paths. So I could point to a couple of those, but I think one of the ones that, and I've probably talked about it on the podcast a little bit before, right? Is like my personal experience with like my friendships and stuff. But I think that's one
Yeah.
that like I personally like to share because I feel like it's different in that like it's not necessarily like a business move or whatever. It's very much more so like a personal life decision. And yeah, I mean like for
No, but
me, like a
knowing
big
it from you, dude, this is like the most powerful thing I think you could share here in this
yeah.
moment.
Mm,
So that thanks for saying that, dude. I feel like it for sure was the most powerful thing that happened in my life to kind of like really shift my trajectory because the reality is like um I was already married. So, like I had that going for me, but I was still not quite where I wanted to be. You know what I mean? I had kind of
Mhm.
this like entrepreneurial drive, but I still wasn't quite where I wanted to be. I felt like I had a good like spiritual life going on, but still wasn't quite where I wanted to be. Right. And I was just kind of like, what the heck is like,
Yeah.
why is like life just not clicking the way that it needs to? And
mm,
after taking time and spending time with my wife, spending time with really good friends that like I were friends, but also in a way like a mentor too to me. Shout out Hunter. um,
Mhm.
I was spending time with these people in my life, and I just realized like, hey, listen, like there's this whole area of like you that like kind of just needs to get fixed, right? And I was kind of trying to figure out what is that. I was kind of living almost this like two like double life sort of scenario, right? Where it's like this part of me like wants to go out and hang out with like all my friends from going up and going to the bars and drinking and like, staying out and like all that fun stuff. And then this part of me is like, I got to make sure that like I'm a really good husband and like I'm progressing my career forward and like I'm focusing on the things that really matter. And I was just torn between these two worlds and I
Mm.
didn't want to give up on this because it felt like that's who I was. Like that was my past. That's what I grew up in. And like this is a
Mhm.
piece of Caleb that I just
So
didn't want
much
to
of your
let go.
identity was in it, right?
So much of my identity was there, and it took like really good, like honest, transparent advice from the other people on this side, right? The people who are, I think, like encouraging me and lifting me up in the goals that I really wanted for my life to realize, like, hey, I need to probably like let go of some of these relationships and start focusing on like the things in my life that I know are going to push me to the right place and surround myself with encouragement rather than like
Yeah.
discouragement, if that makes sense. And so,
mm,
so
mhm,
for me,
Mhm.
that was a big leap of faith because I had to, make a call where like a lot of the people that I grew up with, that I was spending a lot of time with, I had to make a hard decision to say, hey, look, like I can't be doing this stuff anymore. I can't be spending my time on these things because I know that like this isn't what I want in 5 years from now. Like I don't want to keep on doing the same thing. Like you're talking about Dakota, like the status quo, just doing the same thing over and over and over, waking up 5 years from now realizing like I'm still just kind of getting drunk on the weekends and like you
Mhm.
know what I mean, like that, like, and just kind of
Yeah.
waking up to the same old, and I'm like, I don't want that, right? So I had to make a leap of faith to say, listen, like it's probably going to hurt really bad right now because I'm going to have to release like people that like I've spent so much time with and that I love, truly love and care about, but I'm going to have to
mhm,
stop spending time there the way that I was and take a leap of faith to be like, look, I know that this plan is way better for me over here. Like I know that it is.
Mhm.
And so I'm going to take a leap of faith to focus on that stuff. And by far the best decision I've ever made for my life. Like by far.
mm,
Everything changed. My relationship with my wife got so much better. Relationship with God, so much better. My career path and like financially, everything skyrocketed. And it was because literally I took a time where I was like, I'm not doing this thing anymore. Like I'm going this way. And that was a
mhm.
Yeah.
that was a leap of faith. But yeah, so thanks for letting me kind of share that, guys. But
That's really
Dude,
that's
that
cool, man.
that one is so encouraging. And I feel like the moral, there's so many morals I think you could pull from that, but like the thing that I hear is like you if you want a big change in your life, you have to change your surroundings, and your surroundings aren't necessarily where you live. Like they
Mhm,
could be, but it's a lot of the people that you just interact with. And
yeah.
mhm,
I think like, there's a lot of people that talk about like, get out of your hometown because your hometown's bringing you down or whatever. And I think there's a lot of truth to that because you only know what is achievable by seeing what's been achieved, right? And so if your friend group that you're still hanging out with, every weekend or whatever is kind of all in the same place, and that's a place you don't want to be in, you almost have to remove yourself from it to understand, hey, like there's more out there. You know what I mean? And we get stuck in that. And like being from a small town, like I see it as well. It's like a lot of people I grew up with still doing the exact same things that their parents were doing the same things that their parents did. And they're all still in that bubble. And it's not a bad thing if that's what you're happy with. But if you're not happy with it, that's the biggest lever you can pull to be like, wait, actually, this isn't what I want. I need to like expand my horizons a little bit. So Caleb, it's shout out to you, because that's not easy, dude. Like, it's just not, like, I know that that's not easy, but and also it's hard because it's easy to be misunderstood when you make that decision, because I'm sure your friends were like, what, dude, you think you're better than us? And it's like, no, not at all. I think I'm exactly like you. I just want to figure out a way to like not be doing this in 5 years, and clearly it worked for you, but like that couldn't have been an easy conversation.
No, it definitely wasn't. And I think, looking back now to like, there's probably ways that I could have handled those conversations better, like 100%, you know what I mean? There's a lot of emotion attached, I think, when you're making those or having those calls and those conversations. But at the end of the day, look, like every single person that is alive right now has a certain amount of time, right? We all have the same exact amount of time to spend in every single day. And we have to choose where we spend that time. Like, what are we focusing on? And for me, I knew that like, I want to focus on growing a family. I want to focus on growing a company and my career. And I want to focus on my relationship with God, because I know if I do those things, I'm going to end up where I actually want to be, right? Like, I know that if I shoot there, like I'm going to be where I want to be, right? And so
even if you miss, you're still in the right area.
Even if I miss, right? It's kind of like they say, like, shoot for the moon, land amongst the stars, right? Like, I know if I'm going this direction, like I'm going to be better off than I am right now for a fact if I go that route. And so just going back to the time thing, right? We have to be able to say, where are you going to spend your time? Like where, like if you're stuck, right? If you're feeling stuck, you're feeling like, man, I just can't get out of this rut. I'm not seeing anything change. Look at where you're spending your time. Okay. It's not about just saying like, being a mean person, like I'm cutting friendships, I'm cutting this person, like, or whatever, being like a jerk about stuff. Like, that's not the point. The point is to say, how can I spend the only amount of time that I have? I'm not getting any more every day. How can I take the time that I have and start focusing on the things that really, truly matter to me? And I know are going to project me into, or push me into the right direction. Right. That's the conversation I had with myself. And yeah, again, best, probably most impactful decision I've ever made for myself. So yeah.
Amazing.
Got to take big swings to get big results, man. Simple as that.
That's it. How about you, Matthew? Like, let's hear about your leaps of faith, my friend.
Okay. I am currently working on giving myself more credit at the moment. I'm trying to break out of that shrinking wallflower kind of thing of sort of just not acknowledging growth, I guess. I don't know why. I'm a 9, I'm a peacemaker, so I'm just kind of like, whatever works for everyone, I'm fine. But
but real quick, Matthew, on that, because I think you're very humble and humility is good, but true humility is knowing who you've been created to be and acknowledging that you are that person. You know what I mean? Like, humility is really understanding, who did God create you to be? Be proud for that. You know what I mean? So, because false humility is like, I'm not worth, everybody's better than me or whatever. Like, no, dude, you are the best version of you. And that's real humility. Right. And so you can be proud of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, totally. And I think it's like breaking those kind of habits, which I've kind of had over the years, which has been really helpful in the past few years, especially. So, hearing your stories of like taking leaps, I'm thinking to myself, wow, that's kind of crazy. But actually looking back on it, I'm like, wow, I took leaps too, and I can own them and be happy with them. A couple monumental life ones, I guess, was, leaving my home country and crossing the sea for love. That's kind of a big one.
That's a huge one, dude. That's massive.
You know, when I was in college back in England studying linguistics, like I found Nicole, we found each other, and everyone else is like in these relationships, and like everyone's in relationships like with people at the same college and all that kind of stuff, and it's all like very close. And then there's me with, oh, I met this girl over the summer and we went on like 3 dates, and now we're gonna do long distance. Oh, and by the way, 3 months in, I bought a ring. Like my friends thought I was like, is she like drugged you? Like, has she got like blackmail over you? Like, what's happening?
This is like the Harry Potter love potion, like that time when Ron is like totally in love with that random girl.
Exactly. It kind of probably looked a bit like that, because like these guys are like going out to the club at like 9, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'll see you later. I'm gonna call Nicole before bed, and like, I'm on the phone for like
that's
3
how you know
hours.
you got it good. That's how you know you got it good.
Seriously.
It's all
And
over
like,
at that point.
what's wrong with you? Like, come on, bro, let's go get a drink. And I'm like, oh, I'll catch you the next time. This kind of stuff. And it wasn't until I think
an English dude in college turning down a trip to the pub, dude. That's something crazy right there.
I mean, I still went quite a lot. I'll be honest with
you. You're like, it wasn't all the pub trips. This was like once a month that I turned it down.
I suppose I'm gonna get some FaceTime in with her, you know, just keep it alive.
Oh my gosh.
No, it's kind of frequent, but when Nicole came out in Easter, so this is like, what would that be? Like almost 10 months after we started dating. And these, like my friends, my roommates are all like, you know, who is this girl that's got this huge hold over you? And then when she comes out and they meet her and they see us together, they see it. They're like, you guys have it. You guys have it. You got to go for it, kind of thing. So kind of like stepping out and doing something that seemed crazy to like everyone else, but in my mind I had that moral compass of like, no, just keep steady, keep going, like this is the right thing. And that was a huge leap. And then obviously like moving over here when we got married was pretty big. But you know, I studied linguistics undergrad and then systematic theology in my postgrad over here, and I was perfectly content in just like, I know, yeah, get me on a couch for an hour with a coffee and you'll fall asleep, you know. Who wants to know about transubstantiation? No, anyone? But I was perfectly happy. Like my ideal job at that time was like, I don't know, something in a ministry, and just being happy, not really pushing myself and actually thinking about what I wanted. And there came a point where I realized this wasn't what I wanted. And that's tough when, you know, you go to school for two things and it kind of lines up with what you want. And then you realize, kind of like you, Caleb, this isn't what I want. I need to make a change. So taking that leap and going outside of my comfort zone, putting, you know, money and prospects, a house, all this kind of stuff like on the line, and being like, no, I'm going to look outside of what I have as safety and actually go for something. That was a huge leap, and you know, it led me here. So I'm pretty happy. It led me to working with both of you guys. So, cool. Yeah, I mean, I think there's more leaps than I give myself credit for in my life, and I'm starting to learn that that's okay. And like you were saying, Dakota, there's fake humble, and then there's like arrogance where it's just like, I'm the best. I made all the right decisions in my life, and you can be like me. I'm not like a that kind of person either, but it's okay to be comfortable with your decisions, even though that led to hard conversations.
Yeah.
And
yeah, dude. Or even when they go wrong, you know, like plenty. If you make big swings, there's plenty of times where it's going to go wrong. And you're going to learn from that. And that's the key. But dude, I think what is interesting about, you said awesome stories and thank you for sharing. Something that I'm learning a lot is when you make a decision, you are likely thinking about your long-term future when you make it, and you're assuming things about your future self that
100%.
almost never come to be true, right? So like a year ago, when I was probably talking about moving to Tennessee for you guys, you know, you guys could probably go back and quote me on some stuff a year ago that I would totally disagree with today. right?
Mhm.
And that fluid sort of nature of like, you're not who you're gonna be in 6 months or a year or 5 years or 10 years. You're going to be completely different, and you're going to want different things, and life is going to
Mhm.
throw things at you that make you realize different things. And
Mhm.
understanding that, and sort of like knowing that it's okay that that happens, is a huge factor in how to take big risks, right? And big
Mhm.
changes. Because
Yeah.
like, dude, I'm nothing like I was 5 years ago. Nothing. Like,
Mhm.
if
Yeah.
I met myself from 5 years ago, I'd be like, whoa,
Who
who
are
is
you?
this guy? You
Yeah.
know?
Get
And
it together.
no, like seriously, dude, I would be scared. I would be scared at the amount of confidence I have now, is what it would be.
Yeah.
Like, but,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that comes with making these decisions and figuring it out.
I was
But
just
what I
talking to
wanted to say,
myself, I think.
yeah, right. Well, same, dude, same, honestly. But dude, I feel like it comes back to that like idea of like, you got to make the decision that's right for you in the moment with the confidence that you have about who you are now, but
Mhm.
understand that like nothing is permanent. You know,
Mhm.
like
Mm,
it all changes. It's all fluid, and from the outside looking in, people see that as like, well, you're dumb if you didn't predict that to happen. And I'm like, no, I'm honest with myself enough to know that
mhm.
I'm going to be a different person in a couple years. And as
Mhm.
long as the people around me grow with me and we can do this thing together, great. And that's
Be
what
golden.
a
Yeah.
good marriage looks like. That's what a good relationship looks like. It's like, hey, I love you for who you are today, and I'm going to love you for who you are tomorrow. And we're going to do this thing
Mm.
together, you know?
Yeah. So cool.
But
It's quite an
yeah, you go
onions
to
up in
college
there.
thinking like,
Yeah.
oh, dude, I'm gonna be a minister, and then it's like, oh crap, I don't think that anymore. And now what do I do? It's like, yeah, that's normal. You're gonna
For
change.
sure, man. Yeah, I know
Yeah.
we mentioned like the Harry Potter love potions, and I'm gonna quote another Harry Potter thing, which was always stuck with me, which is Dumbledore telling Harry, "Now is the time to choose between what is right and what is easy." And I
Mm,
feel like we so often choose that easy. And me myself, there's still times where I'm like, "Am I being safe? Am I just like playing it safe because I'm scared?" kind of stuff, rather than
Mhm.
extending outside of comfort zones and
yeah,
actually just going for it when I know it's the right thing to do. So that's always stuck with me. I know it's kind of cheesy because it's Harry Potter, but hey,
No, I mean that's
pretty
yeah,
good.
that's honestly some straight wisdom from the Dumbledore. Love it. It's good. It's good.
smart guy.
He
Rest in
is.
peace.
He's super.
Wait, he
Seriously though.
dies?
Um, gosh dang it,
I was
Matthew.
talking about the actor.
Um,
I'm no spoilers. I
Oh,
was talking about the
yeah,
actor.
yeah, yeah.
oh, I suppose that
Um,
we all
He
die.
died,
so
didn't he?
Yeah,
yeah, he did. He did. Rest in peace though, for real. He was so good. Absolute legend.
Legend.
But Matthew, side note, totally random now because I feel like we're kind of past the topic, but I feel like you and Nicole's story could totally be like a Netflix holiday special. Like to be
Oh yeah,
honest with you, like the like
Hallmark.
you know what I mean? Like the
oh
English
gosh.
boy like meets this
Hmm.
artist in America and like 3 months later buys a ring and flies over. Like I'm
Hmm.
like, man, we could watch that movie. Like that is something that Tori and I would
Oh
make
yeah,
some hot chocolate, kick our feet up,
Hmm.
and we're
Christmas
watching
in
that.
the Cotswolds, something like that. Yeah.
dude. And growing up with Nicole, your wife,
Hmm.
JC and I joke all the time about how she found like her perfect like story for her, because you are
Yeah.
like that thing for her. Like she
Hmm.
didn't belong in our hometown growing up, is how we all felt. Like she was like this artsy sort of like, off the wall, like, gonna
Hmm.
gonna go do big things type of person, is how we all, at least how JC and I felt. Like, she's like, she wasn't like small town. Like she's painting on the weekends, and
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
reading
yeah.
novels in her room and stuff. And I'm like, then she met this dude from the
This
UK, fell
English,
in love one summer, and like, has this whole like crazy romance story. And I'm like,
it's a
that's
Netflix
fitting, dude.
special.
It's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And it kind of like circles back to what we were talking about with like you guys as business partners and like our marriages. It's like when you're with the right person in the right context, you stretch each other,
Mhm.
and
Hmm.
you provide that sort of base point where you can both grow. And if anyone's listening to this and thinking like, oh man, I don't have that, I'm not saying, cut off your family and your spouse or anything like that. But, it's so essential to growth to have that right surrounding, whether it's the people you hang out with, but more importantly, who you trust every single day. and putting your trust in that person. And, you know, I think I said on the last episode, Nicole grew me in so many ways, and I think that I've done the same thing for her. And you know, watching you both work at your at growing ad class, you both had that synergy as well, and you have that with your wives, and it just lays a testament to opening yourself up to someone and growing with them. And it's just the hardest thing in the world to do, but the best thing in the world to do.
Well, this has been an episode of Big Leaps, and I think the moral of the story is, man, like when you look back at your life, you're gonna see these moments, these defining moments, you know. And sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't. Sometimes, you know, you think back, should I have done that? But I think the point is, without those defining moments, we don't get to where we want to be. And I think we can all tell the narrative of our life if you really think back through it, and like, dang, that happening that night and that thing changed everything, right? Or when I made this decision, it shifted the trajectory of my life. And I think if we approach our life moving forward now as, what big swings do I need to take to get to where I want to go? I think that's the moral. It's like, sometimes there are those big decisions, those big swings you have to take. Not saying it's an everyday thing, not saying it's even like something you have to do every year, but like, if you want big results, you have to make big changes, you know? And so this has been a fun one, guys. I really loved hearing your guys's examples. And hey, man, if you're listening to this at home, we want to hear from you. Throw it in the chat, throw it in the comments, whatever. What big changes did you make in your life that resulted in you know, getting you to where you want to be? But it's been D&D episode 7. Looking forward to chatting with you guys on the next one.